The pandemic has been a catalyst for so much innovation, especially when it comes to how we work, learn, and parent. Joan Nguyen is the co-founder and CEO of Bumo, a company reinventing co-working spaces, education for kids, and parenting. As a serial entrepreneur and mother of two toddlers herself, she is passionate about transforming early childhood learning and building resources for families so that the next generation can learn through exploration, imagination, innovation, and creativity.
Before she started Bumo with her co-founder Kersell Lim, Joan started MeriEducation at the age of 20, which went on to become an Inc. 5000 company providing students with everything from SAT prep services to general academic tutoring. From an early age, being raised by refugee parents and experiencing poverty firsthand taught her what a privilege it was to have the opportunity to receive an education. These experiences fueled her as she set out on her journey to build her next venture, as well as when it came time to pivot and innovate as the world began facing unprecedented changes. So, Joan, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just here at the office with my two kiddos.
We are really looking forward to diving into your story. It's been a really interesting journey starting this podcast with Dominique during these super unprecedented times. And it's been really rewarding for us to just bring in founders from different industries and connect with them and learn their stories of perseverance and adaptability. And so it's really become a source of inspiration for us, honestly, to have all of these people on, including you. And so we're really grateful you were able to join us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I mean, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to share sort of my journey and Bumo's journey too, and what we've created so far. I mean, it's really crazy to think about the fact that it's, even 2022 because we didn't start our company too long ago, and it just feels like this crazy blur, right? I mean, every founder, I think, says that the first, 18 to 24 months is a complete blur. And I think for me, it's so compounded because I always tell the company that, we existed in three phases of the world, right? One is pre-pandemic, one is, the pandemic. And then right now, fingers crossed, is post-pandemic. And so, given the fact that historically have faced those three different sort of phases of the world, it feels like I'm a dinosaur, right? It feels like we've been doing this for a really long time. So, yeah, no, super excited to share with you the sort of journey of, being a founder and, how Boomo got started and where it's at now and where we want to go.
So it's obviously really easy for someone to just go do a quick Google search for Bumo, but at TFR, we go all the way back to the beginning. I really want to know, what was it like growing up as Joan Nguyen? What were you like? What were your interests in your early days? Walk us through that a bit.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's do it. So I am the proud daughter of two refugees. So that's really, really important. And I think that's, a chapter in my life that, I will never forget and never forget to mention. My mom and dad, basically immigrated here from Vietnam. They were boat people. And, my dad fixed TVs and VCRs when we were little. My mom was a seamstress, so she sewed garments like 14 to 17 hours a day. I lived in this like teeny tiny apartment. I mean, it was called an apartment, but it was really just like this thing with a room and a restroom and a little kitchenette that was behind a restaurant. And so we grew up super modestly, to say the least, right? And, I still believe my parents, of course, achieved the American dream because they came here literally with nothing and they were able to buy a home, even though it wasn't a fancy home. And, their kids were able to go to college. And that was my biggest source of inspiration for me, and a source of, why I work so hard, because I really feel like there's a sense of honor, a sense of duty when you work really, really hard, and you can't really explain it unless if you've kind of like have some sort of experience like that, right? And so, education has always been really important for my parents because my dad just graduated from seventh grade and my mom just graduated from high school. So neither of them went to college. And I was the oldest child. And as with any, sort of like quintessential Asian refugee family, my parents wanted me to become a doctor or a lawyer. And I think for a moment, that's what I also wanted to become. Not because I had a fascination with the law or with medicine, but I think that was sort of the next step of elevation, right, to my parents as Asian refugees, and seeing, what they sacrificed, what they did to get me to where I was in a position that I could do anything I wanted to do. That was like my next step, right? Like that would be like in my mind, like, okay, I made them proud. I did them right, right? But I've always been a little like creative weirdo. So I always liked doing creative things. I always liked exploring, I don't know, creative ventures. So I remember in like fifth grade, I collected TY Beanie Babies and, would look online and see like how much they were going for. And then I saved up money and like bought them and, tried to flip them. And then I remember even one day setting up a table in front of my grandma's house to sell Beanie Babies. And there's like a picture of me. It's so funny. Like I posted it actually on my Instagram and I got so much feedback on it because I just like had my two hands like on the sides of my face and I was like just hunched over and I just looked visibly stressed, right? As a 10-year-old child trying to sell Beanie Babies. And that, I guess, forever set the tone of my life, was like just wanting this like hyper achievement and feeling stressed about it. But it wasn't necessarily also, interestingly, married with this, intense, like, I don't know, like I have to get a 4.0, I have to get like, the perfect SAT score kind of vibe. I kind of expressed that in so many different ways. So from fifth grade selling Beanie Babies, and getting like just okay grades really. And then middle school, I wanted to go to this Washington, D.C. trip, I remember. And my parents obviously could not afford to send me to Washington, D.C. I mean, up until that point, I had never been on an airplane before, right? So our family, quote unquote vacations were really, anywhere we could go in a car, right? Because we couldn't afford a plane ticket or even a hotel. And so I remember our eighth grade history teacher, Mr. Green, he came in, he's like, okay, so we have these like C's candies and you could buy them for 50 cents and you could sell them for $1. And I was like doing the math in my head. I was like, oh my gosh, that's like a huge markup, right? So I remember I asked my mom to borrow some money and that I would pay back. And I bought these 6 cases of C's candies and I had to walk home from school. So I remember like my little like dweeby body, like trying to carry like this like heavy candy, right? And I remember they were so heavy that I would literally walk home, like not standing straight, but like leaning back so that the weight of the candy would just like rest on my body, right? Because they were so, so heavy. And then so I sold the candy, I made some money, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can make more money. My sister is a doctor. So thank you for checking off that box, Diana. So she's a doctor in the family. And then she's a year younger than me, and she was in seventh grade. And I was like, okay, so I'm competing with all these eighth graders to sell this candy. And, seventh graders, there's a demand for candy. They want the candy, but, none of their seventh grade friends are selling candy. And at that point, seventh graders and eighth graders just don't talk to each other because that is just not a social norm, right? Back in the 90s. So, I told my sister, I was like, can you sell this candy? I had her friends sell the candy. I gave them like a commission for it. So I ended up making enough money to pay for my plane ticket, pay for everything, and, pay for souvenirs to bring back to my family. And so it was, just like kind of like a precursor, right, to my just sense of excitement that I would get from being entrepreneurial. And that kind of like followed through high school. High school was very much the same. I was not the best student. I was the kid who would ask for a hall pass and never come back. I think my senior year, my sister and I, who my sister's younger again, we were in the same math class, and I was getting the lowest grade in the class, and she was getting the highest grade in the class. And so I don't know, I just remember her telling me like, oh, Joan, like you better get your grades up. And then the teacher telling her, Diana, if your sister does not pass this class, I'm not giving you your A. And my sister graduated as salutatorian. And so she's like, what the heck? Like, you better get your grades up. So she tutored me and I got a C. So, so that happened. And yeah, so that was kind of like a weird thing for me academically. But, in terms of, again, my entrepreneurial spirit persisted because I remember running for like ASB, student government, right? And everybody does like the crazy colorful signs and the big paint markers and stuff like that against the white butcher paper. And in my mind, I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm doing brown craft paper, and I'm going to just do black and white paint because I want them, if they can't read it, to stand from afar and know that that's my sign, right? So, things like that. Or, I just started getting, it was brand recognition, right? And just, colorways and understanding brand and making funny slogans, so that it was like catchy and funny. And then that sort of like at that point, I still wanted to become a doctor. So I applied to be a bio major. And I remember, I like to say that I applied for 4 colleges because I didn't know. I mean, my parents didn't go to college. I was like, oh, but I applied to 4, that's a lot. So I applied to 4 colleges, got rejected to all of them, and then appealed and got rejected again. So I like to say that I applied to 4 and got rejected to 8, right? And so magically, I got into one of the UC schools because I had good state test scores. I guess I was kind of smart. And so I thankfully was able to get into a 4-year university at that time. And that's, I think, that where the evolution happened, right? I became a better student. I became just even more entrepreneurial. And I think that was like really a transformative time for me.
I wanted to dive a little bit deeper with you because from selling Beanie Babies to developing a multi-level marketing campaign to raise money for candy for a school trip to also being 19, working with a congresswoman. What I really wanted to dive deeper with you about is that you've always seemed passionate about learning, but most of all adapting. So can you speak more about like how you've used your grit in the face of tragedy when most of the time we feel hopeless? How are you able to leverage that to turn your hopelessness into helping or serving your community at a time when tragedy really struck you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when bad things happen, and that's unfortunately bad things will always happen, right? I think as a sort of weird reaction that I have is I react to it in a way where I see it as an opportunity to grow. I see it as an opportunity to innovate and to think, right? So I remember when I was 19, I interned for a congresswoman in California, and that was during the time of Hurricane Katrina. And I just remember picking up the phone and people calling in to the congresswoman and talking about, what are we going to do? Like all these people are homeless and they're displaced and they don't have clothes, they don't have anything. What are we going to do? And I remember being trained. I can't remember what I was trained to exactly say verbatim, but I remember I was trained and given a stock answer, right, to reply. Because I was only 19 and they're like, hey, well, this little 19-year-old intern, we're going to give her a stock response because what if she like botches this, right? Um, and like promises a bill or something. And so then I had this stock response, and I just remember just feeling inspired in a way. I mean, that summer, interning for the congresswoman, I taught myself how to sew because I decided to take a 40-hour-a-week unpaid internship, which you should never do. And I was like, I can't buy any clothes, so I'm going to make my clothes. So I took the sewing machine that my mom actually used to use, and I started sewing with it. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I could make clothes. And, as I made clothes, and then I, posted on like MySpace, and people were like, oh, that's really amazing. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I could sell the things I make, right? And see if people will actually buy it. And people did. And then I was like, maybe I could sell it and, make some money. So I sold it, and I started something called Clothing for Charity, where I sold my designs. And so that was probably the first time where, in the face of not a personal hardship, but just not a worldwide, but more like just a tragedy, or a sort of setback that didn't just have to do with me or my immediate community. That was a lot more far reaching, where I felt like the power of what I could do as one person, right? And I think that really laid the groundwork for, when we dealt with the pandemic and Bumo.
I appreciate you sharing that, especially you using your mom's sewing machine. And you mentioned earlier how your mom grew up as a Vietnamese refugee and how she was a seamstress. So just learning more about that, I really empathize with your family's history. I spent some time in a refugee camp and really learning about the plight of the refugee crisis and how this was impacting me, although I wasn't a part of that community, and really wanting to do something. And at the time, I saw like many of the hygiene items were strictly donation based. And I felt that, no one should everyone should have the right to have the basic necessities they need, to live a happier life. So I'm so happy you shared that. And I wanted to also ask you, I read that you actually were terrified of speaking to people. So, how did you go from being petrified to speaking to people to speaking to constituents to now? I'm sure anybody you meet, I think you make them feel very warm.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, that definitely comes back down to another story with the congresswoman. I'll make it quick, because I know I'm giving just like every single random story in my life now. But I remember when I interned for the congresswoman, and then one of the field representatives couldn't go to an event, right? And they said, okay, well, who can go? And they're like, Joan, you go, right? You represent the congresswoman at this event. We'll give you like a fancy title, like a congressional fellow or something, right? So I remember going there, and it was at some fancy hotel in LA. I can't remember the name, but a historic fancy hotel. And coming in and trying, I was like, oh my gosh, there's all these people, and trying to talk to one lady, right, who I don't know what it was. I think it was the fact that she was like this Asian woman, right, who was older. So I felt like, okay, well, this is like just like talking to my mom. So I'm going to go to her, because I felt like this, like, I don't know, something in me just made me feel like, okay, she's like my mom. So I could just go up to her and talk to her. And I went up to her, and I was like, hi, my name's Joan Nguyen, and I'm with Congresswoman, blah, 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 right? And then she just looks at me like with the side of her eyes, and she like passes me her card with in the between her fingers, like as if she's passing me like a cigarette, right? And I just remember feeling so just not good. And I just felt like, oh my God, she just doesn't even see me as a human. And so then I just retreated to the restroom, and I like sat in a stall the entire event. And I just remember even sitting in the stall and hearing the opera singer. It was like from a movie, like coming in, because I guess they hired an opera singer that day, coming into the restroom, practicing her vocals in the restroom, and waiting for the event to be over, and then leaving without having talked to anybody else. And I just remember feeling so defeated, right? Because it was something so easy, like talking. It's like, oh, come on, like that's what you do every single day. But it was like a mix of emotions. I was very anxious. I was very, very nervous. And so what happened after that was I always knew I wanted to do big, big things. And I said to myself, okay, well, I work really hard. I'm getting a little smarter, right? And I'm trying harder in school. But this speaking thing, God, I need to shake it. I need to just like fix it. So something in my mind just like told me like I just have to learn how to speak to people and just like put myself out there, as like nervous as it makes me or as uncomfortable as it makes me. And I think it was that conscious effort of just like throwing myself out there after that event that has made me feel a lot more comfortable speaking, right? And I think it is so important. I feel like the way you talk to people, how you talk to people, affects how you make them feel. And then also, of course, opens like so many doors, right, for you. And I think that's the most powerful tool, is really the art of conversation, right?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you shared a time when you had this huge fear. And I definitely also used to have a fear of speaking, so I can definitely relate to that and sort of overcoming that. But I think it shows a huge amount of just emotional intelligence and resilience to be like, okay, I need to come up with a plan to actually get over this. And clearly now you're an amazing speaker, so that's not like a thing for you anymore. But I mean, you did that at 19, and you worked with this congresswoman, and you were working on these projects with her. And then at 20, you decided to start MeriEducation. I want to know what your inner dialogue was like during that time, because you literally went from like working for someone else to being like, okay, I'm gonna start my own thing. Like, were you like, this is something I need to do and I have a plan, and you just felt really driven to do it, or did it just start organically?
It's funny that I kind of ping-ponged a lot, right, during, I guess, like my formative entrepreneurial years. And everything kind of like is, I believe everything that we do has tangencies, right? Like the different things that we explore, the different experiences that we have, they're not separate, but that they're tangent to each other. And so what I experienced really proved this point of tangency, right? And it's because during my internship with Congresswoman, I started the Clothing for Charity, which was the fashion, charity project. I then actually launched, very short-lived though, my own eponymous clothing line called Joan Nguyen Clothing, right? And then that was in 2007. I felt very cool having that. It was really exciting. It was supposed to be like this like boutique higher end clothing line. And then of course the economy nosedived during that time. And so nobody was going to pick up a clothing line, right, from a no name. And so I was tutoring kids on the side to make money for my clothing line. And then my boyfriend, who's my husband now at the time, he's a finance person. So of course his question to me was, you can't do both. So which one actually makes you money? And I was like, okay, well, clothing is definitely not making me money. It's like hemorrhaging money left and right now. But the tutoring thing, I'm actually making a little bit of money, right? And so he's like, I would just focus on that. So I cold turkey dropped the clothing thing, like just dropped it. Started tutoring kids. I was driving around to different houses, and I was like, okay, I just need one office so I don't move around so much, because the amount of time I'm moving around between students, they could come to me and I could actually make more, right? And so that's what happened there. And then, one room that I rented in like this executive suite full of lawyers who hated me because I was bringing these like rambunctious high school kids into their building. I ended up renting one more room, and then another room, and then the conference room. And then then I launched my first center in 2010. After that, launched a few more locations, grew it to about 50 employees, um, had 4 offices, work with kids globally, grew it to an Inc. 5000 company by 2017. So, that was like a longer, course trajectory, right? So it wasn't like this quick, fast, like startup, kind of like what I'm doing now. But that was like my MBA and my PhD for starting a business, right? I really learned, everything, not everything I needed to know, because I'm still learning, and I feel like I always will be learning. But I mean, I learned so many things about how to talk to people. I learned also really, jarring things, right? It's like you can't make everybody happy. You're going to have clients who are upset with you. You're going to have employees who are upset with you. And I was such and I think I still am, right? My executive coach tells me, like, you always want everybody to like you. You can't, that's not possible. Like, everyone's not going to like you, Joan. I was like, oh, really? So like, I want people to like me. And so, it was, I just had to deal with the fact that people were just not going to like me. And that was really hard for me, actually. And it still is hard for me right now. But I learned to be scrappy. I learned, how to build systems and processes. I learned, how to grow something out of nothing, right? And I think the biggest lesson I learned that wasn't really business, but more psychological, emotional, was success is a function really of time and hard work, right? You work really hard, you're really persistent, you just give it time, right? It's like growing a plant. You can't douse it with water. You just have to like just keep on going, just pour in that teaspoon of water, whatever it is. I'm really bad with plants, so don't even. This is not plant advice, right? This is just like an analogy, okay? Disclaimer for anybody who's trying to keep a plant alive. But that's just kind of what I learned, was like, man, any setback I have, if I just work really freaking hard, and if I just give it time, right? Work hard as a function of time, I will see some success somewhere, right? And that was a really, really huge learning, right? During my time with MeriEducation.
Yeah, I love the point that you made about just giving an idea time to grow and like putting your all into it. And I also think that people listening, especially, will find it valuable, and I find it valuable to continuously hear that being a people pleaser, like you cannot please everybody, and people are not going to like you. That's something I'm still learning, but I feel like it's important to remind yourself of that once in a while, because it's difficult, especially when you have to sit down and make tough decisions sometimes, to know that everyone is not going to be pleased, but you have to just keep your long-term vision in mind and keep putting in the work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, it's not about sort of the wins, right? That make you a great entrepreneur. It's like how you deal with the losses, because you're always going to get a loss. You're always going to get a setback. And it's like, how do you deal with it and how do you learn from it? I think that's the most important.
It sounds like just understanding the importance of putting one foot in front of the other every day, not giving up, is really huge, especially in entrepreneurship, and just knowing it's a long game. I think one of the things that are missed when entrepreneurs first start the journey is the leadership style, right? And really understanding, like, how do you lead a team? So what would you say, going from people pleaser, where would you say you are now in terms of your leadership style?
Oh my gosh, I feel like that's a very big question. I feel like I'm still actually figuring that out, because the company has evolved so much. A year and a
Yeah.
half ago, we only had 3 team members, and now we have
Mhm.
over 60. And
Mhm.
so it's changed so much, which means that I have to change. I think I'd like to think, right, that I try to be, as much as I can, a compassionate leader, right? Up to the point where I have to be a decisive leader, right? And so compassion, and decisiveness kind of like have this like kind of balance, right? Because sometimes in a case by case situation, you have to be more compassionate than you have to be like decisive and firm, because it just depends on the situation. Because, I really like to lead Bumo as a human first organization, right? I really care about the people. I care about having relationships. And so everything is kind of like case by case with me. I'm still very personable. Like, people still Slack me directly, right? When they want anything, they joke around with me. I like, my biggest saying when I interview anybody actually is, when you work at Bumo, you're not too good for anything and you're good enough for everything. And so what that means is, even yesterday, I was unpacking boxes, trying to get a space set up. But the other day, I was flying to San Francisco pitching a multi-billion-dollar company on why they need to work with Bumo, right? And that's what I try to show the team is there's no there's pride in what we do, but don't be prideful, right? I mean, there's like, you have a sense of humility, but then also you have to negotiate that with, which I am still learning, the value of your time, right? Because it's and it's hard. It's hard when you want to build a team that's, let's do everything together. I will like hold a baby. I can literally hold babies, because they're so cute. So I go back there and I can't help it. But then the team has kicked me out. They're just like, get out of here. Like, you're not supposed to be holding babies. You're supposed to be running the company. I'm like, okay, fine. And so it's, still hard for me because I'm such a hands-on person. And, anybody who works here and works with me, whether, however it is, wherever they worked for me, it's, that I am very, very involved. And I think that's really important for me, actually, to show my involvement. But I think also, um, on a personal level and as a leader, something that I work on is, be involved, be there, be present. But then also, I'm only one person. I only have so much time. So, I even thought about it this morning. Yesterday, I felt so bad. I was in the office. The team was like carrying these big boxes, right? And like, I just couldn't help it. Like, I was like, give me a box. Let me carry these boxes with you guys. So I just like spent, a good chunk of the day carrying boxes. And this morning I woke up feeling, yeah, we carried boxes together. Right. But a part of me also felt like upset at myself. I was like, oh my gosh, like in that time that I'm carrying the boxes, I could be doing something else that's like much bigger, much more meaningful. Or, right, carrying the boxes could pay its dividends in other ways, like showing the team, like we're in this together, right? Which that team culture and building that culture, you can't pay somebody to do, right? So, so I do that tango a lot, I think. So I'm definitely still figuring it out. I'm not a perfect leader. I still have a lot of room for growth.
I read that you were working about like 80-hour work weeks before um, co-founding Bumo, and one of the things I really wanted to take away from that is really understanding, like, is there a balance? Like, how can you be a present parent and present leader? And you kind of answered that, like with the tango, right? But I wanted to know, could you kind of speak more about that transition of working those 80-hour work weeks into now your role as a leader? How are you navigating that, and kind of what tips have worked for you that you could share with other moms to help them either not feel guilty, or be as present as they possibly can?
So yeah, I mean, I think balance is such a myth, right? Balance is having something equally balanced. I don't think that can actually happen because you can't have everything be important at the same time, right? If that's your perception of balance, I like to think that if we could redefine balance as, in the moment, every hour, there's going to be one thing that's important. There's going to be five things in your life that are important, but in that hour, one thing is going to be more important than the other, right? And I think it's up to you to decide what that is. So for instance, I take my kids to school every day. That's like my thing that I do. And, when I ask my kids, what are three things you love about mommy? They go, I love your kisses. I love your hugs. And I love that you take me to school every day. And so, that's like my thing with them, to show them that, hey, I'm here. I'm going to take you to school. Please be nice to me. And so like, that's my thing. And it's like, I could go into the office earlier, and sometimes I do, right? Um, and I miss it. I'm not saying I do it every single day religiously, 300 and whatever, 65 days a year, but most of the time I do it. So I pick what I want to do and I stick to it, right? And then I also know that I come home, at a reasonable time, like 5:36. I plug into mom mode. I love cooking. It's actually my outlet. I don't cook because I feel like it's my job or that's what I'm supposed to do. I do it because I like it. And if I didn't like it, I wouldn't do it. So I cook and I do bath time. We put the kids down and then by 9:30 I work and also have meetings up till midnight, right? But then you know, so there's like a moment where my family's really, really important. That's the 5 to 9:30 window. And I tell my whole team that, like, oh, this is my family time. Everybody knows Joan takes her kids to school in the morning, right? Everyone knows this is like Joan's time. She's probably with the kids right now, right? And everybody also knows if Joan's going to get back to me, it's going to be after 9:30, right? Not that I expect my employees to respond to me after 9:30, but I will get back to you at 9:30. You can respond when you're plugged in. And so I think, that's important. And then also it's like, it's okay to disappoint people. When I was running MeriEducation, I felt like I was very a junior CEO, right? Because I would like, it was like, I could not compromise anything. So it was like, if I made a commitment to a client, if I made a commitment to the company, I couldn't move it. It was like not movable and everything was like fixed, right? Whereas here, like yesterday, I had two important meetings and I had my kids' tennis practice, right? That I promised them that I would take them to or go with them with their dad. And I was like, oh, I don't want to bail on this person. I don't want to move this appointment. But then I was like, okay, let me just do it. And so I just moved the appointment to this morning, actually, and they were fine. It was fine. Like they're gonna be fine. Like nobody's gonna hate you. And I read this quote online that made me feel like extra guilty, but it was, your kids are never going to, you are never going to regret spending too much time with your kids, right? And so those are kind of the things that I mean, what I try to do is like every hour there's one thing that's really important. Compartmentalize your day. I also have two things to do lists. So I have one list and have a second list next to it is what can I delegate? And I actually use a online the Google task board, right? Which is like the Google like list. And so I have two, and then one is reassigned and one is mine. Because then I challenge myself to look at my tasks and then I drag over what can be reassigned, right? And that really helps me a lot. I also am a really big weirdo, and I time myself every time I do something. I know this is like psychotic and I don't recommend it because it's very anxiety inducing. Yeah. So, but I do that. So that helps me kind of like be more conscious of my time and not drag my feet.
Those are great tips. I just wanted seriously, especially with the my to-do list and what can I delegate. I think that's huge because when we make our to-do lists, I think we often feel like we have to make sure we get every single thing done. And I really appreciate you sharing tips for moms out there like, hey, commit to what you can commit to and stick to that. So if it's, hey, you take the kids to school in the morning or you make dinner, just so it helps you feel more present because you can't do everything all the time. So I thought those were really, really great tips. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm still, adjusting along the way. And I think that's also a thing too, is like you could set a norm, right, for yourself and you could change it, right? So, there was a time where I think I was picking up the kids from school and that was really hard for me because I would have a meeting or I would run late and would just feel even more guilty, right? Because things would run over. So I changed that. And now, dropping them off works a lot better.
Yeah, I really love the planning tip that you shared as well because delegation is so difficult for me. I think it would be really, really great to have those two separate lists and just figure out what you can prioritize and what you can sort of give to other people. And that kind of leads into what I wanted to talk about in regards to having a co founder. personally, I actually just had my co-founder leave my team because of her own family health issues. But you have a co-founder that I actually have followed just her fashion world since I made an Instagram. So I thought it was really cool when she launched Bumo with you, because I kind of got to go along on this journey of you guys building it and really seeing how you guys were reinventing the future of work. And that was really interesting. Tell us how your partnership came about, and how is your dynamic, and sort of how did you choose each other to go on this journey with?
It's funny. I think I kind of like wiggled myself into this, right? Because I was never supposed to be part of Bumo. And going back to what I said earlier about tangencies, right? Like everything you do in life is tangent to something else in your life, whether it's going to happen that year or 10 years later. And actually, so dialing way back, during that little pocket of time that I was doing fashion, I had my own fashion line. I actually set up a booth in Santa Monica at this fashion event. And then this girl comes up to me, and it was Chriselle. And she's like, "Hi, did you make this clothes?" I was like, "Yeah, I did." And so she's like, "I'm a buyer at a boutique. Like, do you want to like show me your line sheet?" I was like, "Sure." So we were emailing back and forth. And she's like, "I'm a wardrobe stylist." It's like, "Cool." And then at that point, I decided to ditch fashion, right? And so we kind of like, drifted off. Had our mutual friend Elijah, who's like both of our best friends. And when Crystal had this idea and she was pregnant with Colette, and then Elliot, my son, was only 3 months old, he's like, "Come to my house." And then like, Crystal has this great idea. And I was like hooked on the idea. I was like super hooked on it. And this goes back to my theory of you do anything, just do it your best, right? And then everything is a function of hard work and time. So I wasn't even part of Bumo. Like I wasn't even part of the team. I was just this random person who learned about the idea, and I was obsessed with it. So I would just email them, her and just like a few other people that were helping her. I became obsessive with it. I launched like the beta test for it, and I wasn't even part of the team. I wasn't getting paid anything. Like I wasn't a consultant. I was just like, I was practically a voluntary intern, right? And so then one day she was, and this is why I love Chriselle so much, is Chriselle is honestly the most fair, self-aware and gracious person, right? So she's not this type of person who's like this shark who's like, "Oh, that girl Joan, she's working for free. Heck yes, let's milk her." But Chriselle saw me and was like, "Dude, like, do you just want to be kind of like a part of this? Like maybe like a small part, maybe?" And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool." And so, again, just doing my thing, working really, really hard. Like I worked from day one, like as if it was my company, right? But it wasn't. And then again, Chriselle being Chriselle was like, I really want to do this with you. And you like work so hard. I don't know anybody who works as hard as you. You get things done. And I just want you to be my co-founder and the CEO of the company. And I said, yeah, I would love to. This is exciting. And so that's what happened. And we're very, if you hear us speak anywhere, like we're very honest about each other, right? And so she knows her gift, right? She's amazing at digital community building, amazing at brand, amazing at you know thinking about ways to drum up excitement. She's incredibly creative. On the other hand, I'm an operator. I am, a thinker. I am a, process maker. I'm a doer, right? And so together we complement each other really, really well, right? So, she does her thing really well that I cannot do well at all. I mean, I think she allowed me to concept like one Instagram post a while ago, and it's like probably our still like lowest performing post of all time, right? And then I think after that, I gently was removed from any ideation. And so she just does her thing really well, and I do my thing really well, and that's what works. And we have very honest dialogue with each other. So we know our expectations of each other, and it's very, it makes for a great relationship when you have two honest and self-aware co-founders, because I think you have to be self-aware. You have to know what you're great at. You also have to know what you're not good at, right? And be aware of that. So that's kind of how our co-founder relationship started, and that's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, you talking about making sure that your co-founder, or really any other team member that you bring on, has a complementary skill set to your own was a really great point. And I think that has probably been one of the key reasons why both of you have been able to build this into what it is today. I'm super intrigued by all of the different branches of the company and how you and your team work to sort of tie those three branches together under this huge mission of reinventing the future of family, as you mentioned before. So, Bumo Care, Brain, and Work. Can you take us through those different segments and the mission that ties them all together, and like which part started first and sort of the whole road to building those out?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we started Bumo Work, the concept. That was our first concept, right? It was Chriselle's idea, co-working with childcare. Super excited to open it. We were supposed to open March of 2020. And I just remember telling Chriselle, I was like, man, I think this pandemic thing, like, I think we might have to tell our contractors that we're delayed for a month or something. And then she's like, yeah, maybe. And so it was like March, and we're like, oh my God, like this is like not going to happen. And so, two things happened, right, that kicked into high gear. One was survival mode. So we knew that we could not generate any more revenue, right, from Bumo, because of our original concept depended on people coming into person. And when people could not come anywhere in person, that basically, sat on the sidelines, right, as a business. And then two was just seeing ourselves as parents, and seeing other parents struggle during the pandemic with online learning. So all the kids went on Zoom. Schools were not equipped to do Zoom classes or online learning. Not their fault. I mean, nobody planned for this. And I just remember my daughter looking at her on a Zoom class, and she just had like stickers all over her face. Like I was just like, oh my God, what is happening? I was like, I'm paying for tuition. She has stickers all over her face. And I was talking to Chris. I was like, is this happening to you too? She's like, oh my God, it's just like not effective right now. And I was like, okay, I think we can do this better. So April 9th, we got the domain boomobrain.com and launched a wait list, launched the website 11 days later with 2 employees. And we had our first class May 18th, started a fleet of fun live classes late June of 2020. By the end of 2020, we had over 60,000 classes booked by kids in over 30 countries. And so that was like a crazy time. We, really got some pretty strong tailwinds from COVID, right? To be able to do this, and accelerate the growth of online learning. And that, in the end, it all worked out because it showed parents that, hey, this thing, Bumo, it's good. My kids learning, they know a thing or two about early childhood education. And so it almost looked like we did on purpose, right? Like, oh, we're going to start this online community, and online classes, and then we're going to launch our physical space, right? And then so we did end up launching our physical space in July of 2021, a year later after the pandemic, and starting our edtech platform. So we went from edtech to like brick and mortar childcare, and that was exciting. We had a wait list of 2,000 kids. We I don't know, it was just like incredible, like to see it, up and running. Parents were here in person, and now, not even 8 months later, our wait list is 6 months to 2 years long. So parents have to wait that long to get into Bumo now because we're so packed. And so it's constant evolution, right? So Bumo, this concept of Bumo work was created pre-pandemic. During the pandemic, we did the ed tech, right? And then so into this post-pandemic world, Chriselle and I, we really challenge ourselves a lot, and we think about, wow, looking back at last year, 20,000 childcare centers completely permanently shut down. Um, you know, there's 51% or more now of parents live in a childcare desert. How many moms are, demoted? How many moms are leaving the workforce, right? And it's a massive, massive problem. And so the Bumo work model is exciting for us and we love it still. And we will still grow the Bumo work model, which is like this like polished 0 to 1 concept. But where we challenge ourselves is, how do we build, a more scalable model? So what we're doing right now is we are launching on-demand childcare. So we can't reveal too much about it because it's still kind of like in its very early stages. But the idea is this will allow us to scale a lot faster. We're already, launching 3 more locations this month, right? For on demand. We have a growing wait list for parents. We want it so that a parent can book childcare as easy as it is to book a reservation on Resi or Open Table, as easy it is to, book a dog walker, a dog sitter on Rover. Like, I don't know why booking childcare is so hard. I don't know why I have to go through, like, even with the biggest, shiniest companies for childcare. I'm not going to call them out right now, but like, come on, get it together, fix your user interface, make the user experience better. It's crappy. And so, that's what we want to do. Is I want it to be easy. Parenting is hard enough, right? Like, if I need childcare, like, I want it. So it's exciting because right now I'm here at one of the spaces that we're launching with my kids. Of course, like, we're not open yet. We're open next week, right? So next week, this would not be a problem. I would have my kids with somebody and then I could freely, record 6,000 podcasts in one day, right? But today I have them with, like, mountains of toys, playing in the adjacent room. But yeah, that's what we're working on right now. And that's what we're focused on is, those 3 levers is we have our brick and mortar, that will still grow in bigger cities. We have our ed tech, which is shifting more to academic classes and programs that kids can't get in in-person school. Foreign language is a huge hit. We teach Mandarin, Korean, Spanish, and French. We have coding classes. We have math classes, one-on-one instruction. And then we have FamTech, so which is our on-demand childcare model. And that is going to be our North Star, is focusing on this on-demand childcare, because even though it has its complexities, right, with people, and it's not like I can get an app to take care of a child, right? But it's something that we are driven by. We know that it's a massive problem. We know that it disproportionately affects women. And we know that when it affects a lot of people, it's a huge problem. And there's a definite connection to childcare and the workforce, right? Um, if we can disrupt an industry like childcare, we are, in the right place. And that's what Bumo is set to do, is we will lift the future of family by disrupting childcare and the way it's being done.
I think it's really impressive how your team just really mobilized to launch Boomo Brain, and you guys were hitting like these milestones, these pretty big milestones, like every month for a few months in a row before you had these really packed classes. So I think that just goes to show how dedicated your team is to the mission.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's something that I would be remiss to not mention too. I mean, I think one of my favorite quotes that I've heard is that leaders don't climb to the top, they're actually carried to the top. And I feel like my team is amazing. I mean, they end to end, they are the most passionate, the most driven people, and they are so agile. I mean, I think I have like 30 Swift, like Swiss Army knives, like at Bumo, right? Like, they just can do anything and everything. And if anything they don't know to do, they'll figure it out, right? And it comes down to like our mission. Like, they care about the mission so much. They care about what we do so much, right? That it's like, okay, we need to figure this out. Let's figure it out. Because at the end of the day, who is being served by it? It is the child, right? It is the family that we're trying to help and lift up. So I think that's an important thing for founders to always remember is, if you think you climb to the top, then you think it's like a solo effort, right? And you think it's all on you, and that's draining. But if you know that you are carried to the top and it's up to you to find the people to carry you, you uplift them, you empower them, you give them the tools to do that. That is what makes you a successful leader.
I think that definitely speaks volumes to your team and the hard work they do. And I know most recently as well, I believe as of May 2021, you all closed 3.5 million in seed funding. So first, congratulations. And could you share, I don't know, maybe the top two or three lessons that you learned that were critical to you all raising that seed funding?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this like glitz and glamour with fundraising,
Yeah,
right? And it sounds so easy, and I think more founders need to talk about how hard it is, right?
yeah,
It's very hard, and it never gets easier. And so, and I think it's, and I just have to say it that way because I know it sounds like so sort of like somber and like, oh wow, bleak, right? Oh, it's always hard. And but that's like, come on, that's how you weed out the best founders, right? It's like if it's going to be easy, everyone would be doing it, right? It's hard because it freaking tests you, right? If you're going to be a founder of $1 billion company or a big company, you better bet that certain elements of it are going to be very, very hard, right? And fundraising is definitely one of them. So I think knowing that's going to be hard, number one, um, asking for help too. So I'm very open about asking for help and also open about giving help, right? And so one of the founders I remember sent me her blurb to pass along. And most people are like, great, thank you for the blurb. I'll pass it along. And I responded to her, I was like, I'm so sorry if I'm overstepping, right? But these are the things I would do to your blurb to make it better because I've been there and I've written crappy blurbs before, not knowing that. And she was so thankful. She's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. What do you think of this? And I gave her some more feedback and then she sent it back to me. And so I think asking for help and then giving help too, because you always have to pay it forward, right? So that's number two. And I would say number three is, um, which I think is the most, and now people are talking about it more. It's fundraising is, about, it comes down to the founders, right? It's like you have to, you know, follow through. Your reputation is really important. Show people that you work really hard, that you're really responsive, paint this beautiful big vision. And I think um, for female founders, what happens is, and I remember pitching an investor saying this was, we tend to, I don't want to say every female founder does this, but we tend to like try to prove ourselves first, whereas like if we were a male trying to get an investment, we would be like, oh my god, I made like $2 in revenue and I need to raise like 30 million because this is gonna be the next big thing. Whereas a female founder would be like, I have like 3 million ARR, I know I'm not at 5 million yet, but I really want to raise like 3 million. Like, what do you think about that? Do you think that's enough? If you want to give me a smaller check, that's totally okay too. And so, we need to come in and just like, I don't know what it is, like drink a glass of whiskey before, whatever, like just like come in with that confidence and be like, I created this company. It's massively disruptive. We went from, blah, blah, blah to blah, blah revenue. And this is how I modeled out by 2027 where we're going to go. And these are the things that differentiate us from other companies. And you just have to be confident because I think one thing too that I realize is that I see a lot from female founders is we also raise too little, right? I see male founders saying, I'm going to raise like $5 million for my seed. And then I'll ask a female founder like, hey, just wondering like, what are you raising? Like, oh, we're raising like 350,000 or 500,000. And I think I'm not saying that the bigger the number, the better it is, because that has to do with many, many other things, right? Your dilution, like your valuation. So this is not like financial advice at all, but I'm just saying that that's what I'm seeing, right? And I feel like when you raise a little bit too to a seasoned investor, that also signals something, right? If seasoned investors, they see people raising lots of dollars, and it makes you actually look more confident and more competent when you go in there like gangbusters. Hey, I want $5 million, right? But when you go in there like, I want $500,000, please. They're just like, okay, what kind of what you're telling me that you want to start like $1 billion company and you want 500K? Like, dream big, right? And we are dreaming big. That's the frustrating thing as female founders. We're dreaming so big, and we're dreaming so smart, and we're so diligent, and we're so careful. But those are the things that I wish somebody just like literally threw cold water over my face and said, Joan, listen to me. You got to raise a big round and just be confident about it. And who cares, right? So that's advice that I would give. I know I said 3 things, and I think I said like 10, but hopefully that was helpful.
Obviously, there's so much going on in the world right now, and it's often really difficult to focus on the good. We really wanted to ask you how you keep going and what really gives you hope, and how you self-care, honestly, too.
Yeah, so I'm a very like human person. So, okay, obviously I'm a human. That sounds really weird that I even said that. But like I love the human experience. I love, it's like the things that keep me going are the little and the big things, right? It's going to Boom work and seeing the kids, and like seeing the little girl, her name's Nora, and everything I wear, she's like, you're wearing a dancing pants, you're wearing dancing dresses, and then I do a twirl for her, and she gets so happy, and she's 2.5. Or like seeing like the little kids say hi to me, or like a little boy, he's like 13 months old, his name's Teddy, and every time I open the infant room, he always like walks towards me to give me a hug. Those things are really, really amazing. Parents messaging in about how they would have like, dropped out of graduate school if like we didn't have Bumo, or it's just the impact that we make, right? I think that really drives me a lot, and that has always driven me. I mean, MeriEducation was all about making impact on kids, and kids. I got a postcard actually a few months ago at my office. I was like, what is this random postcard? And it was my student from like 10 years ago. His mom sent me a postcard that he graduated from Columbia Law School, and thanked me for making him stay like really focused. And I was like, oh my gosh, how did she find me? And she just like found me, and she like sent me this postcard. And those are the things. And it sounds a little bit also like, I'm going to say it, borderline narcissistic too, right? Because like I love how I can make people feel, right? And that to me is so exciting. I also love building things. I love a challenge, right? So that keeps me going. And I think because we do so many different things, it's just so fun. I mean, and in terms of self-care, it's it's self-care is different for everybody, right? I mean, I remember I was on the plane in San Francisco home with our VP of marketing, and we're just talking, and she's like, oh, I can't wait to go to the spa, or like, I miss a spa. And I was like, oh God, I hate the spa. Like, I hate massages. Like, I really do. And so I think self-care is different for everybody. I think for me, self-care is like finding things that just make me like, I love being busy, right? So self-care isn't just like sitting and not doing anything. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I love to cook. I love throwing dinner parties. Again, a human person, right? I love interacting with people. I love experiences, giving people a fun experience. That makes me happy. But I know this sounds like the thing that I'm not supposed to say, but I'm going to say it, is I freaking love to work. I love to work more than I shop. I love to work more than going to get my nails done. Like, I just love it. It's like so fun for me. And I know people say, oh God, you're a workaholic, or you're not, if you're, I feel like that's also a bad thing. It's like if I really truly love to work and it brings me a lot of joy, how is it wrong? I get if somebody works really hard because they're just driven by money and like, okay, I'm going to work to like make more billable hours tonight and like work through the night and like die working. Like that's different, right? But for me, it's like when I work, it's like I light up and I feel like it's like I'm playing. Like that's what work is to me, is I feel like I'm playing, right? And it's like I described it to somebody before. The sensation I get from working is weirdly the same sensation I got as a little girl when I would play make believe. Like that's the same feeling. I can't describe it, but that's like the same exact feeling I get when I work. So yeah, that's what I do.
One of the things we really find joy in is just learning about someone else's journey. And during this time, we've really had the pleasure to learn more about you, Christy, as well as the social impact that you are making in the world. But one of the most beautiful things I learned about your journey was the power of failure. In fact, you said the power of failure, it debilitates you if you let it, or it strengthens you to know exactly how to wrangle it. And so you decided to wrangle it, and it's really been a pleasure to meet you, Joan. So thank you for sharing your story and helping us as new founders.
Absolutely. I mean, it's my pleasure. I'm still a new founder too, so I'm still figuring it out. So we can all figure it out together.
Where can folks find you?
Yeah, I have my Instagram, which is Joan, Joan .bumo, Bumo. You can follow me for weird videos of my kids. And my signature move every night is like, I work later in the evening, so I always have my signature photo of my laptop with a glass of wine and a timestamp. That's what I do like at night, so they
Yeah.
can see like the weird hours I work. But that's where you can find me. Yeah.